As for the Baird steal and the Sexton kick and Henshaw try, and I think everyone in the stadium said, well, finally, grand. Ireland only behind, I was reading, for 54 minutes total across this entire Grand Slam winning championship, and never once in the second half have Ireland been behind in this Grand Slam. It's about as dominant a Grand Slam as you'll remember.
Yeah, it didn't feel, even at one point with 20 minutes to go, you know, if you looked at the stat board, you'd think, oh, well, it couldn't have been that easy, but that wasn't reflective of certainly not my sense of comfort to what this team was going to deliver in the last 15, 20 minutes, particularly being a man up.
Yeah.
And having, you know, very good operators pulling the strings at halfback, particularly Johnny knowing where to get the ball to space, to bounce, and keeping the team going forward. So I think it was a very comprehensive Grand Slam, if there is such a thing, because in none of the games did I ever free. It didn't go down to the last 5 minutes at any point. It was done with 10 minutes to go in all cases, in the two most difficult games being the penultimate and the final game. And I suppose maybe to a point against France, the Ringrose try, but that was still, you know, icing on the cake. I think the job was done at that stage. So yeah, I think it was a lot to enjoy. And I know Andy Dunn talked about, you know, the 6 tries from Ireland. I still think that is so significant. We talked about the Ireland defence last week. 6 tries conceded in 5 games in 6 nations is remarkable, considering the way the game is being played now.
Yes.
Maybe 20 years ago, the way 3-pointers were being kicked and penalties won games, that's not the case anymore. Penalties don't win games. Tries now win games. And so teams are searching for it. They're giving up 3 points to go to corners. And so they're giving themselves way more opportunities to score 5-pointers or 7-pointers. So, the fact that we managed to only concede 6 tries, one of them an intercept, is the real takeaway for me from this Six Nations.
Okay, and further to your point, actually, record number of tries in the competition this year, 91, which beats the 86 of 2021, so it's going that way. So 6 of the 91 against Ireland.
That's top defence.
Yeah, the lads were making the point last night. Guy used to be a little bit under the radar. You know, we're not. Simon, excuse me.
Guy's 52 today. Happy birthday, Guy.
Happy birthday, excuse me. That proves my point. He just going about his business, doing an extraordinary job. Yeah. And everyone's quick to talk O'Connell and Mike Catt and, of course, Andy Farrell. But there he is in the coach's box, masterminding 6 tries in 5 games.
Yeah, that's like, he's obviously been given license to go and do that, but that's huge. It's an ability to be able to put across to very, very talented players your concept of as to how you're going to be that miserly, and allowing individuals to have roles. Ringrose in particular, James Lowe. Even when I looked at it with the England game, trying to make the occasional shoot and read, and he got caught out a couple of times against Italy, but he was a little bit better once or twice against England of forcing the attacker back inside to the strength of the defence. That's a big focus.
You flagged that early on, actually.
Yeah, that's a big focus of Ireland now, where they can, to be able to just be, they're disruptors in defence, and they're doing their own thing. It's definitely, there's no one else I think has a style like what Ireland are trying to achieve. They're very, very good at not having any dead bodies on the ground. You know, we used to call them logs, you know, lying on the ground with having no effect. Now it's speed to feet is huge. Regeneration in attack and defence is a real point of difference for this Ireland team. An ability to be able to do a job and at least another half a job in every defensive situation. So if you're a tackler, getting back to your feet and getting in, posting up close around the ruck, or if you're stuck in behind the ruck, getting up again and just nudging the ruck, making that ball a little less secure for the opposition, just not giving anyone an easy ride out of speed of ruck ball, which is everything in the modern game.
Yeah, you've referenced the red card a few times. I've never ever heard such disparity in an interpretation of a moment. from lots of people saying red card to lots of people saying yellow to Bernard Jackman last night and Against the Head saying he didn't even think it was a penalty. That is the full spectrum there.
What's your take before I get into it? Because I'm interested, because you don't always get to give your opinion, particularly from a TV point of view or an anchor point of view. So what do you reckon?
I understand the red argument and reluctantly accept it, but in my bones, I feel a yellow a touch more. Now, Andy Dunn thinks, and he's the only person I've heard say it, if you weren't listening last night, he thinks Stewart's I only had milliseconds, it was not intentional, even though intent isn't relevant to the law. He thinks actually, he probably knew what he was doing, and in his experience on a pitch, where your elbow is and where someone's head is at all times. Although he did say in real time he didn't think that, so slow motion can skew things. So, look, I understand. Like Gordon Darcy, for instance, he tweeted, it's unlucky but red regardless. Keenan clearly regathering the ball, and Stewart needed to be in a position to make a tackle. He wasn't, so he ended up clattering him in the head. It's exactly the same as a player mistiming a guy in the air.
Why wasn't he in a position to make a tackle? That's my point in all of this. So what is it? I don't think you can take the collision in isolation without looking at the lead into it. And I think this is where the modern game has to go, in my opinion, in that the speed of players arriving to a contact point, if it's out of control and it doesn't leave any margin for error or reaction time, and you find yourself in a position where, what could I do? I couldn't vanish. Means you're already in a danger spot. Means that, I was just there to brace. The speed at which he came into the collision, I don't think players can do that anymore and justify that, and put their hands up and say, that I found myself in an unfortunate spot at the end. The two are ultimately aligned. There's a responsibility now for the defender to come in, and we're trying to outlaw that rugby league, two lads charging at one another and leave a slight movement or variation of footwork where a flailing arm all of a sudden catches a player higher, catches on the chin. Like, that's a red card. Yeah. So in a watered down version of that, that's for me what Stewart did. Okay. He came charging into close down the space. But if you come charging in and you don't have reaction time to be able to change your movements necessarily, the duty of care is with you and not with the attacker.
Yes.
And that's why it was a natural instinct to brace, but you can't brace when another player is picking the ball up and in possession of the ball. Yeah, that's not good enough.
That makes a lot of sense. So he created that dynamic by rushing.
He did, and that's what it is. Of course I have sympathy, because in the past that's a rugby incident. I think in the modern game of how we're trying to future-proof it and reduce these unnecessary head collisions, and that for me is one of them. The only way that happens is if he comes in at a different speed, where he'll, even if Keenan reacts slightly differently, the force won't be as great to justify a red card. That will be mitigated down to a yellow card. Whereas the force was so severe because of the speed he came into the collision that I don't think Jaco Peyper, under the remit of what the checklist now is on the laws, I think he got it spot on personally.
It's hard to argue with that. That's why there's no mitigation, because Buddy, you came in at that speed, so
yeah. There, what's is there mitigation in? Well, it was a knock on. Well, if he saw it as a knock on, he immediately should have cooled the jets a bit, slowed up, and gone, okay, this is going to be. Whereas the acceleration continued, even though it looked for all money, and I know we're looking at it retrospectively with multiple replays, but in real time, when a ball has gone forward enough to know that it's a knock-on. So it is the challenge of making decisions within hundredths of a second, and that is the difficult thing, and that's why you will always have an element of sympathy for him in this. But I think the big learning from this is about changing behaviours, about players not being in a position to come charging in and hold their hands up when they catch someone, in an unfortunate situation, or that old school rugby incident
Yeah.
where actually the ownership and the responsibility is now with you to get into that space in a safer way, and to be in a position to be able to put in a fair and concise tackle, or to be able to abort from a situation without causing major damage to the oncoming attacker.
That's very fair. Yeah, that's very fair.
I had a real,
Go on.
like I was, when I saw it, I didn't see it in real time, and then the first replay, we're in studio, and I was with Clive and Johnny Wilkinson and Bestie, and as soon as I saw it, I said, that's going to be red because of the laws. And then they were like, no. And then at half-time, Clive came in and talked about, I think it was a yellow. And my point was that genuinely, we're now at a crossroads where we've got to think about the game in 20 years' time and participation levels. And of course, you don't want to sanitise the game from what it is now. And there will be accidents. But I think you've got to... we've got to draw a line in the sand as to what is going to be acceptable to allow that to be the case in 20 years' time. And we've got to make some harsh calls here and now. And I don't know what the situation is to this point, but I really hope that, World Rugby or Six Nations don't retract or redact the red card and back the officials, because I think on the process and protocol of going through in the checklist, I think they did get it spot on because of what we've just talked about and particularly the speed into that space.
There you go. That was but a taste of the full rugby conversation. As usual, you can get the full chat wherever you get your podcast. It's waiting for you right now.